Good morning, everyone. It's Kay Francis, your host for It Is What It Is. Or is it? Today, we're going to talk about our topic being the downside of entitlement. But first, let's start out and realize that for centuries, there's been entitled people and others that were not by any way. But the Gen X's that have come in, a lot of them, young, that I've seen in sessions, feel very entitled. And that's why I want to point out the downside. We'd like to think everyone is created equal. And basically we are, if you look at it. But we're not talking about that necessarily financially or anything like that, because we know that there are people that have more than we do. Or we also know they could have a lot less. So with that said, let's talk about what the downside really is. And what the downside is about is that when you feel entitled as though it's owed to you or you expect it, it's really a lack of respect within you about how hard someone worked so that you could be entitled. Because when you're entitled, generally speaking, someone's taking care of you. Your parents, somebody's supporting you. And the more they have, probably the more they give without any boundaries or limits. And you miss out on all the lessons that come with entitlement and the lack of it. And that's what we're talking about. It robs you of wanting to be motivated. It can rob you of that. It can rob you of even relationships, because you're going to have expectations that maybe no one could possibly meet because you're not going to be reasonable. I think of the young man I worked with whose father worked really hard. He was poor to begin with, but he became very, very wealthy. He raised his son, but he didn't know how to parent. He was on the road all the time. And I think he felt that what he could do is give him everything. And in doing so, what did we have? We had someone, a young man, who learned how to lie because his father would catch him doing things he shouldn't with money. Yet it was the father giving him the money. He took him once a year to be outfitted for all his clothes for the year. He bought him a condo. He set him up beautifully, but he was young. He was in college. He didn't need all that. And unfortunately, with his personality, I'm not saying that some entitled people aren't very grateful and very respectful and learn how to manage money. But not this one. He would pawn things so he could give it to buy friends with. The reason he came in is he socially was somewhat awkward. So as the story moved on, and he did get through college, I ended the sessions once he had a job because he was a lawyer, but he really wasn't motivated. So he wasn't going to really go any big law firm or anything like that. But Dad still supported him. He had no rent, no car payment. His bills were paid. And Dad even went so far as to tell him after a couple of years, it's probably new time for new furniture. I mean, it just was to that point. And so he could sit back and tell me, well, I have a trust. I don't have to worry about anything. And when you speak to him and say, well, what would happen if all the money was gone one day? He says, that'll never happen. He says, my trust is secure. I don't even have to think about that. So what are you really, really looking at in giving and giving without teaching, without letting them have balance in their life? He had difficulty making decisions because they were made for him. He didn't know from writing a check or anything like that, least of all, how to manage the money that was more than he needed, way more than he needed. And that's what he was using to buy his friends and to do what he wanted to do. And that's how he had friends, instead of learning what we were in therapy to learn, and that was to help his social issues, which we worked on. But The problem was he wasn't motivated to do that work. If he wanted to go to New York, Dad had lots of miles so he could go. Did he lie to his father about a lot of things? Absolutely. So, you're not doing your child any favor, because when someone gets entitled in that way, they really don't even trust their own judgment. They really don't. They're not learning life's lessons. They're not learning from consequences. They're not learning from having to own their issues and paying the consequences for them. They're not learning any of the coping skills you need in life. And trust me, you all need them. Now, am I saying that there aren't parents that entitle their children, but their children are respecting it? Look at Warren Buffett. His children work. He's practically a trillionaire. He may be, but he's certainly a billionaire. But he raised his children, his sons, to work. He didn't just hand it over to them. They had to learn like he did growing up. So this is an important topic, I think, for parents or any caregivers, any foster parents. My goodness, the world's filled with foster parents. How about the grandparents? Do you know we have more grandparents raising their children now? And that's hard on them because they're usually on a fixed budget. So most of those children are not going to feel or take unless there's something emotionally or psychologically wrong with them, like addiction. But we're not talking about addiction. We're talking about something that's teaching children balance. This is a reasonable thing to do and a healthy thing to do. So if your child is looking at you and expecting this and expecting that, question yourself. I've seen mothers, single moms, husbands passed away or whatever, and these adult children are putting the mother in a really bad position for her to be able to take care of herself when she's older because the money is going there. And they get angry if she doesn't get to them. Now, a lot of you out there are thinking, I would put up with that for 2 minutes. But you have to walk in someone's shoes. That tells you that the parents feel guilty if they don't, or their childhoods were such that they never want their child to feel what they felt. So they give and they give. So there's reasons that people do this. So this isn't putting parents down today while I'm talking to you. This is really about, hey, stop and think. Of course you want your child to have it better than you. Of course you want to give as much as you possibly can. And you feel bad when you can't. But think about it this way. Is it really awful if your child hears the word no? Do you know no is a complete sentence? It's a simple no. I used to tell my children, the only thing I could ever promise you in life that I am absolutely sure that my promise will be factual, that is that things change. I never promised them anything unless I knew absolutely without a doubt that I could fulfill that promise. And did they come for some things that I didn't want to fulfill? Absolutely. And hear what I said, that I didn't want to fulfill. Because I knew there was a lesson in it for them that they needed to learn. And that might have made them think I was too hard on them. Possibly people would think that. That might have made them think, but I was raising my children by myself. And I wanted them to be independent. And that's a kind of a funny thing, because when they get real independent, then you say, gee, I wish I hadn't made them so independent. They're leaving the nest, and here I am. I kind of felt that way. But, in the long run, that's exactly what they needed. And also, I want to say, when we talk about the downside, it means that there's lack of boundaries in the family, and there's lack of structure. Now, they can have structure or what looks like structure when it's the helicopter or the lawnmower, mom or dad. It's especially difficult when one parent gives it and the other one doesn't agree to it. And they're always at each other about it. And so then they become secretive. One of the parents isn't telling the other one. I mean, it's just an interesting dynamic that goes on in a family when this is an issue. So this isn't a critical appearance, what I'm talking about today. I'm encouraging you to let your children learn the coping skills to become independent so that they can trust their own decision making, that they can trust that they can handle adversity when it comes. Life's not perfect, so that they can handle the real world. And especially now, because the real world is not that pretty, and we all know that. At some point, if you have children, you really want to set them up for life. And that doesn't just mean them feeling secure because you're paving the way for it. It means, hey, what if something happens to me? Where are they? Will they be able to function? When you look at it that way, you realize that nobody has a guarantee of how long they're going to live. You can be here today and gone tomorrow. You could be like Texas, you're flooded out and everything's lost. I mean, everything, a major, major issue and problem and devastation like that. A whole camp of young girls were taken away in a second. Well, that's really not a pleasant subject to look at, is it? And that's what you want your kids to be able to do, that when these crises and this devastation hits, that they can handle it, even if they're not a part of it, that they have the compassion and the empathy to realize how fortunate they are, how blessed they are, that they're still okay. But if you don't have balance and they feel entitled, do they really feel compassion? Don't live through your children, giving them what you never want them to feel or giving them everything you never had. You've really got to face that to yourself and say, am I living to my children? And am I afraid to have these limits or have these boundaries because I had nothing? It's very possible. Or that I didn't like my childhood or the way what I went through. So my child is not going to ever feel this. Trust me, your child, no matter how entitled, will come upon at some point in their life when something doesn't work out for them. So you have to ask yourself, have I done them a favor? Some will be able to say yes, but many won't be able to say yes. And especially, why do they say Gen Z, Gen Z? Well, we're seeing more of it, that's all. Maybe it has to do with technology because we hear more. I just ask you to give this some thought because it's happening, what appears to be more and more. And I think the moral values and the coping skills and the family interaction is getting less and less. And I do not think that you really, really want to have your children expect that they can and have everything. So before we close today, I'm just asking you to sit back and give some real thought to your children and ask yourself, am I balanced with them? Am I having them see the reality of the real world, even if we're in a bracket that they don't have to see it? But am I opening the door for them to understand it so that I don't take away life's lessons that they really do need? So, parents, let your good intentions include discipline, fair discipline. Let it be that you'll let them make a mistake as long as they're not going out in front of a truck, that they can make a mistake and see that they could get through it. Even a little child that falls and you see they're not really hurt badly, and you hug them and say it's going to be okay. You kiss the boo-boo, put the Band-Aid on it, but you don't get dramatic. Oh, and set the stage for a child who has no self-confidence. So again, it's been great spending time with you. I always love that moment when I can do this. And God bless. And remember, always, always keep your faith. Never give up hope and know when to let go. Thank you.